So, welcome to Jumbo IS and welcome to our lecture series called Daily News in Shorts. In this lecture series, we cover a particular day's newspaper in a very short span of time, within 20 minutes. Today, we are going to be covering the newspaper of August 1st, 2024. All right. And in today's newspaper, there were few important news items that we are going to discuss in today's lecture. So, let's take a look at the important topics that are going to feature in this lecture. Okay. These were the important news items of today's newspaper. Okay. Now, today's topics. These are as following. Well, the biggest news of the world is Hamas chief was in Tehran and he was assassinated. Now, people are saying that Israel assassinated him, though Israel has taken no responsibility. But this might snowball a new conflict, okay, between Iran and Israel, because Iran has said that Israel will face severe consequences of this action of theirs. Okay, so we'll discuss this. Then we'll talk about direct seeded rice and zero tillage wheat. These are the two new technologies of growing rice and wheat which would reduce greenhouse gas emissions, they would reduce water consumption, and they would also reduce air pollution because of stubble burning. Right? So, rice and wheat, though many people are saying that India should move towards crop diversification, but you cannot go or do away with growing of rice and wheat. So you need to change the technology of growing rice and wheat, and that is what is being happening. Okay, so what is direct seeded rice technology? What is zero tillage wheat technology? We'll talk about this. Then recently, and in yesterday's news also, we covered Parak portal or the Parak initiative, in which various school board examinations were being assessed. Right now, Parak initiative has talked about equivalence among all the school boards, whether they are state board, CBSE, ICSE. Parak is actually talking about equivalence. So, what is this equivalence, and how has Parak recommended, or how has Parak moved us a step closer to this? Okay, we'll talk about what is this phenomena. Then UP anti-conversion law was already in place 4 years back. Now an amendment bill has been passed with respect to anti-conversion law. So we'll talk about this. And we'll also talk about lithium, which is a critical mineral. Lithium blocks have been found in JNK and government actually opened an auction for them. But not many investors were interested in this auction. So what are the reasons behind that? We'll talk about this. Okay. So without further delay, let's start with topic number 1, which is Hamas chief killed. Now, this is Hamas's chief, political chief. His name is Ismail Haniyeh, and he was in Tehran, Iran's capital, for the swearing-in ceremony of newly elected president of Iran. Okay, Iran's president died in a helicopter crash, so there were new elections in Iran, and a new president has been elected. So, for his swearing-in ceremony, Hamas chief came to Tehran, but here he was assassinated. Now, he was one of the most senior leaders of Hamas, and his death has been confirmed by Hamas and Iran's Revolutionary Guards, and they have said that this would lead to severe escalation of conflict between Israel and Iran. In fact, Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah, has vowed revenge against Israel. Though Israel has taken no responsibility, Israel is silent on the issue. But many people know that it was Israel's doing, or else who wanted Hamas's chief dead. Okay. Now, the assassination occurred less than 24 hours after Israel claimed to have killed Hezbollah's most senior military commander. As you know, recently, we discussed this yesterday also, the Hezbollah attacked Golan Heights, which is an Israel-occupied territory. So, Israel told the world that they are going to attack Hezbollah, and they were successful in killing Hezbollah's most senior military commander. Just 24 hours after that, Hamas's most senior political leader has been killed. Okay. Now, let's talk a bit about Ismail Haniyeh. What was his significance? How significant was he? Now, he's normally living in Qatar. He's not living in Gaza. Though Hamas controls Gaza, but Gaza is not safe for political leadership of Hamas because Israel is attacking Gaza. So he's normally based in Qatar. He had been the face of Hamas's international diplomacy since Israel's retaliation to October 7 attacks on Israel by Hamas. Since the time Hamas attacked Israel on October 7th, 2023, Israel has retaliated massively against Hamas. So he has been the political voice. Okay. He had been taking part in the internationally brokered talks on reaching a ceasefire in Palestinian enclave of Gaza. So behind closed doors, there have been some talks between various stakeholders, Israel and Hamas's leadership regarding ceasefire in Gaza. He was part of that. And he was in Tehran to attend the inauguration of newly elected Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian. Okay. Now, this is a very significant thing because Iran has said that this action of Israel, we will revolt against this action, we will respond to it. And Iran will actually respond to Israel through its proxies. So you can expect new attacks on Israel through Iran's proxies. Now, what are Iran's proxies? These are organizations, terrorist organizations, militant organizations in different countries that are affiliated to Iran. Now, the network of these organizations is also known as, we talked about it yesterday, axis of resistance. Okay, and who are the members of this axis of resistance? Well, the most powerful is Hezbollah, which is Lebanon-based organization. Then there are Houthis, who are in Yemen. Then there was Hamas, whose leader has been killed. And then there was Palestinian Council of Jihad. Okay, so these four organizations are affiliated to Iran, and Iran would use these organizations because they have different geographical locations to attack Israel. Okay, now let's move on to our next news item, which is direct seeded rice and zero tillage wheat. Now, here you can see there is this picture called climate smart agriculture. Well, agriculture is also a contributor towards global warming because through agriculture, various greenhouse gases get emitted. Through agriculture, air pollution also takes place. We all know about the issue of stubble burning and its impact on Delhi's air during the winters, right? Now, greenhouse gas emissions, air pollution, water wastage or usage of water, water consumption, these are blamed on agricultural practices. Okay, and which type of agriculture? Growing of rice and wheat. That's why many people have said that India needs to diversify towards other crops rather than following the monoculture of rice and wheat. But you cannot completely do away growing rice and wheat. Rice and wheat is in demand, right? So we need to come up with new practices of growing rice and wheat so that we minimize greenhouse gas emissions, we minimize air pollution, we minimize water consumption, and new practices for agriculture that are climate smart, that have minimum impact on climate change, are known as climate smart agriculture. So all those technologies, all those procedures that help aid in agricultural productivity, side by side, they also help in minimizing the impact of agriculture on climate change, are known as climate smart or are grouped together as climate smart agriculture. Now, generally, innovation in agricultural procedures is generally taken over or generally done by the government or government institutions. Okay, but this time two private sector seed manufacturers. One is Alvin, Texas headquarter Rice Tech. This is the name of the company, and the other company is Mahaiko, which is Maharashtra based. Both of them have decided to create a joint venture called Paryan Alliance, a 50-50 joint venture. Rice Tech, the company based in Texas, has expertise in direct seeded rice. Okay, and Mahayako has expertise in zero tillage wheat. Okay, so both these companies would use their specific expertise in different areas and come together so that monoculture of rice and wheat minimum impact on climate change. Okay, so this Paryan Alliance, remember the name of this alliance, is using rice by direct seeding. Okay, they are using zero tillage wheat. Okay, now what are these two technologies? First of all, let's talk about direct seeding of rice. To know what direct seeding of rice is, you need to be familiar with how rice is grown. Okay, now how is rice grown generally? What happens is that you actually grow small plants of rice in a separate nursery. Okay, so what you do is you sow the seeds of rice in a special pot and you grow those plants of rice in nurseries. Okay, for a few months or a few weeks. Then when the plants mature, they are transferred from nurseries. Those plants, rice plants, are transferred from nurseries and sown into the fields. Okay, now this process is known as transplantation of rice. So rice seeds are not directly sown into the fields. They are first grown into in a nursery and then they are transplanted to a field. Okay, now for transplantation to happen, before transferring them from nursery to fields, what happens is that the fields are flooded with water and then they are plowed in those flooded waters. That process is known as puddling. So generally rice is grown through transplantation and puddling. Now the problem with these two procedures are that first of all it's labor intensive, quite labor intensive. Transplantation of rice is or involves backbreaking work. Then for puddling, water gets wasted or there is a lot of water consumption because the fields have to be flooded with water. Okay, and then rice is grown in those flooded fields. Make sense? Plus, those flooded fields are also responsible for methane emissions, which is a greenhouse gas. So, growing rice through transplantation methods is labor intensive, is highly water intensive, okay, and emits methane, which is a greenhouse gas which contributes towards global warming. So, instead of that, what you do is you follow direct seeding of rice. You cancel transplantation, you directly sow the seeds of rice into the fields. You use a tractor, you plow the fields, and you directly sow the seeds in those plowed fields, okay, and then you add water. It doesn't involve transplantation of rice, so labor cost is or labor is reduced. Okay, then you don't require puddling for this, so water consumption is reduced, and because there is no puddling, methane is also not emitted. So DSR, direct seeding of rice, basically saves 30% of water by dispensing away with puddling, transplantation, and flooding. Plus, water is added. Why do we flood fields? Why do we do puddling? Water is added so as to prevent the growth of weeds, okay, which actually steal away the entire nutrition that is meant for rice plants, okay. So to prevent the growth of weeds, water is added. But now instead of using water, you use this particular chemical. It is a herbicide. So instead of using water, you use this herbicide, and because of this, direct seeding of rice enhances productivity. In fact, Punjab government has advised farmers to use direct seeding of rice instead of transplantation. Okay, now let's move on to wheat. Now, what is zero tillage wheat? Look, basically, wheat is grown by clearing the fields. Okay. Now, you all are familiar with stubble burning, right? So, what happens is farmers, after growing rice, there is a lot of rice residue that is left in their fields. So, they burn that so as to prepare their fields for sowing wheat. After burning, they plow their fields 3 or 4 times and then they add wheat seeds. Okay, so in wheat, farmers not only burn the stubble from previously harvested paddy crop but also plow the field 3 4 times. The plowings are basically for managing the paddy stubble and weeds. Now, with zero tillage technology, you can sow the seeds directly without any stubble burning. In that rice residue only, you can directly throw the seeds and land preparation using a tractor. The weeds are taken care of by using again the same herbicide and another herbicide called metribuzin. So in zero tillage wheat, what you do is you don't do stubble burning. You use imazethapyr and metribuzin for controlling weeds, weedicides, and through that your wheat productivity also increases. All right. Now Mahayco and Texas-based Rice Tech company are providing these technologies. Through these technologies, well, what would happen is greenhouse gas emissions would get reduced because there is no puddling. Then water consumption would get reduced because again there is no puddling, and stubble burning would get reduced, which would contribute towards air pollution in northern India because of zero tillage wheat. All right. Okay. Let's move forward to third news item, which is equivalence among school boards. So yesterday we talked about Parak initiative of NCRT, and it has recently submitted its report called the Equivalence Report to Ministry of Education. Now, basically, the report has given recommendations on how all the school examination boards can be made equivalent. Generally, a person studying in Assam board or a person giving 10th exam in Assam board might find it easier than CBSE or ICSE. So generally people say that the quality of students coming out of Assam is not as good as quality of students coming out of CBSE schools, right? So to establish equivalence among all the boards, Parak actually conducted a survey, national assessment survey, okay, and gave recommendations on how to establish equivalence. Okay, now let's dive a bit deeper into this concept called equivalence. So what is the meaning of equivalence? At present, India has around 69 school boards. Like, what are those school boards? There are state boards for different states. There is CBSE, there is ICSE, there is National Institute of Open Schooling. There are open school boards, technical and vocational boards, Sanskrit boards, madrasa boards. So all these boards in total amount to 69 school boards. Okay. Now these boards are different from one another. on the basis of their curriculum, type of examination, structure, functioning, right? So basically, what Parak has done is, in its equivalence report, it has given various recommendations regarding administration of these boards, curriculum, assessment, inclusiveness, and infrastructure. So Parak has given recommendations on these 5 parameters, and if all the boards follow these recommendations on these 5 parameters, well, then all these school boards would become equivalent regarding these 5 parameters, and therefore the aim would be, or the objective of Parak would get sorted out. Okay, the objective was that each and every school board should have equivalent standards, benchmark facilities for performance, so that aim would get realized. Okay, now how did Parak generate this report? Okay, so Parak actually took a survey of 32 boards, okay, which excluded Sanskrit boards and madrasas and technical boards. Okay, apart from them, state boards, CBSE, ICSE, NIOS were taken into consideration. An analysis of 2 years worth of questions for all these boards, and a survey was conducted with questions to all these school boards on the previous 5 parameters, these 5 parameters: administration, curriculum, assessment, and all that. So questions were asked to these based on these 5 parameters. Plus, Parak held meetings with the school boards to work on the recommendations. On the basis of that, the report was generated, and if all these recommendations are followed, then all the school boards across the country would be equivalent. So there would be no difference between a student or giving Assam board examination, West Bengal board examination, or CBSE, ICSE, open school board. Any board would do. Okay. Now let's move on to our fourth news item, which is UP Anti-Conversion Law. So 4 years ago, UP Assembly passed Uttar Pradesh Prohibition of Unlawful Conversion of Religion Act. Okay. Now this law was passed to prevent unlawful conversion from one religion to another. Okay. So conversion through unlawful means. Now recently, the Yogi Adityanath BJP government has tabled a new bill to amend this law. And this law is being made more stringent, more strong, so as to prevent forceful conversion or conversion through financial incentives. Okay, basically this law aims to protect vulnerable people. Okay, minors, people with disabilities, women, people from SC/ST communities, right? So they are more vulnerable to force or this unlawful conversion, right? So to protect them, more stringent terms or more stringent, strong things are added in this law through this amendment. What are the changes being made? First of all, earlier in the law, there were restrictions on who can file an FIR against a particular organization who is converting people using unlawful means. Now those restrictions have been removed. Anyone can file an FIR now. Plus, bail conditions are made more stringent. Now it's not that easy to get bail if an accused is arrested under this law. Okay, bail conditions are made similar to someone accused in terrorist cases or money laundering cases. Now that's a bit too much, but the UP government has said that without this, we cannot check unlawful conversion. Okay, plus the punishment has also been increased. All right, that's about it. That's all you need to know about this. Just remember that anyone who would challenge this law, anyone who would challenge UP government or this bill, can do that in Supreme Court, and they would do that on the basis of Article 25 to Article 28, which cover freedom of religion, right? So anyone who disagrees with this law or says that it is violative of our constitution would say so in lieu of, or would say so on the basis of these fundamental rights. Okay, and they can challenge this law in the Honorable Supreme Court. And now let's move on to our last news item, which is lithium in J&K. Now, what happened actually? Very not so optimistic news, basically a pessimistic news. Lithium is very important. Lithium has been categorized as critical mineral because in the future, many things are dependent on lithium. Electric vehicles are dependent on lithium because electric vehicles use batteries that are lithium-ion batteries. Then all the electronic gadgets, phones, laptops, all these electronic gadgets are made up of batteries that are lithium-ion batteries, right? So lithium is important. And that is why it is called critical mineral. The thing is that India does not produce enough lithium. And India is import dependent as far as lithium is concerned. That's why India has been trying to find lithium reserves in India and India has been trying to incentivize mining companies to mine lithium in India so that India is self-reliant when it comes to lithium. Okay, and for that, various lithium blocks were found in J&K, and they were auctioned for exploration to mining companies. One such area, one such district in J&K is Riyasi, where lithium blocks were found, and government was auctioning them. The thing is that not many people participated in this auction. That means there was weak investor response, and this is not good news for India if India wants to become self-reliant in lithium production. Now, why was there weak investor response? First of all, investors or mining companies have cited that there are difficulties around extracting and processing lithium from these hard rocks, hard pegmatite deposits. So the name of the mineral from which this lithium would be extracted is called pegmatite. Remember this name, pegmatite. Pegmatite is the mineral from which lithium would be extracted. Now, pegmatite is a hard rock, and hard rocks or pegmatite deposits are found in Riyasi, and it is very difficult to extract lithium out of them. So it is difficult and expensive process. So that is why investors are saying that it might not be economically viable for them to extract lithium out of it. So this is number one, reason number one. The other is investors have said that when the government auctioned these lithium blocks, okay, so government actually floated a tender and invited bids for this tender. Okay, now different mining companies would place their bids, and the best bid would get the tender for mining lithium, right? But the problem was that not enough bids were made. Not enough investors were interested. Mining companies were interested. Now, the reason cited by mining companies, or the major reason cited by mining companies, was that in that tender, the government failed to provide enough information regarding these lithium blocks. Government needs to provide proper information in the tender because the mining companies would make their financial decisions or economic decisions based on the information provided in this tender. If enough information is not provided in the tender, then investors are kept in the dark. They might bid for this lithium block, but then eventually they would find out that this lithium block was not economically viable. Therefore, it is job of the government to provide enough information in that tender so that mining companies can take a decision on the basis of that information. Okay. Now, mining companies have said that not enough information was provided regarding these lithium blocks, and because of that, they take a decision on whether to bid or not. Okay. That is why mineral reporting standards have to be top notch. These are the mineral reporting standards. Mineral reporting standards are the set of rules and regulations that any government would follow while reporting the information regarding that mineral. So sufficient information to determine the economic viability of mineral mining is important for investors. Now, currently, India uses UN Framework Classification of Resources, UNFC standards, for declaring information on minerals. But mining companies across the world say that UNFC standards are not enough standards or not good standards. Okay. Generally, big mining companies and all the regulators use Committee for Mineral Reserve International Reporting Standards, CRIRCO standards, instead of UNFC one. Because these companies say that CRIRCO standards are better, they reveal more information regarding a mineral, and using that more information, mining companies can take a decision. Okay. So, the need of the hour is that India should shift from UNFC to CRIRSCO, Committee for Mineral Reserves International Reporting Standards. Okay, that's about it. And with that, we conclude today's session. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. And I'm sure it added value to your preparation, and it will add more value if you are consistent with this lecture series. So make sure that you're consistent with it. Okay, you're regular with it. Because it doesn't take much of your time. It just takes 20 minutes or around 20 minutes. But your entire day's current affairs get covered. All right? Okay, then. On that note, I'll be signing off, and I'll see you with tomorrow's current affairs. Thank you, everyone.